Ex-NFL player Michael Oher claims he was taken advantage of and never adopted by the real-life family from The Blind Side, the Touhy family. I'm Rosemary Miller here with Domenic Romano, the managing partner of Romano Law, and he's worked on quite a few book-to-movie deals such as Foxcatcher and Crown Heights. Thank you so much for joining me today, Domenic.
It's my pleasure.
So, Domenic, what's unusual about this scandal and what's familiar? Because it's kind of weird. The conservatorship, the adoption. Could you tell me about it?
Yeah, well, there are generally two types of conservatorships, the involuntary one in Britney Spears scenario, but this one was voluntary. When Michael Oher was 18, when he turned 18 years old, according to reports, his mother, his maternal mother, was also present at the signing. And what's odd is, I mean, that occurred several years ago in in 2014, I believe, or 2004, but quite a while ago. And this story is only coming to the fore now. Coincidentally, the legal action was initiated on Monday, coincidentally, one business day after Friday's launch of Michael Oher's latest book. So there's some oddities here for sure.
Is anything kind of familiar?
Well, it's familiar that in that people are surprised when a big film like The Blind Side, which reportedly was made with a budget of 29 million and makes 300 million, according to box office reports, delivers so little to the subjects of the book and the writers of the book. What people I think don't realize is that the author, typically the author of the underlying material that the book is adapted from, in this case, Michael Lewis, who also wrote Liar's Poker, Moneyball, The Big Short. Michael Lewis is the author that wrote The Blind Side. It was adopted into this film that we're talking about today. But in such cases, the author of the book and even the people depicted in it make a small fraction of the actual direct going in budget, and typically an even smaller fraction of the proceeds, which people misunderstand. Oh, well, if it costs 29 million and you make 300 million, I'm going to get a juicy cut of profits. No, it's net profits. The people who invested in the film, the studio that put up the risk capital, the investors, those are the people that took the biggest risk. So instead of 29 million, if the film had returned zero or been made at a loss, those people would have lost all of their money. And the subjects, Michael Lewis, might have still received their payments, their appearance fees, or what's called life rights in the case of the subjects of the movie, the people, the Touhy family, and or himself that the book is about. So I think there's a misunderstanding here of Hollywood accounting. The lion's share of the profits do not go to the author, do not go to the subjects. In almost every film I've been involved in, and the general Hollywood standard is that most of the profits go to the studio, the stars of the film, and of course the investors who put up the money at risk.
So, speaking of people getting money for this, you said it's not typically normal for someone, the subject of the book or the movie, to get any money from a film.
No,
But
no, I didn't say that. It's usually a modest amount. So it's called life
okay.
rights. And if you Google life rights or what are life rights, we write about it. In fact, the first organic hit you'll see is from RomanoLaw.com. We're
hmm
known. Or if you read about, selling your rights, selling film rights to your book, or film rights in your story, you can read that is quite common, but people misunderstand how much money is at stake. Even in $1 million or multi-million dollar Hollywood film, how much the subjects of the film actually get, the people who the film is about, get a very small fraction of the budget.
So, is it typical for the family members of those subjects to get any money from such films?
Well, you've seen the film, right?
Right.
So the film has the family depicted, and it has Michael Oher. It's arguably about both the family and him and their journey together. So it's customary for studios typically to pay money to the writer of the story. In this case, there's a writer. It's not an original screenplay, to option and then license the underlying material. And it's also customary to obtain life rights. Now, if the person's not famous, you obtain life rights to secure privacy, especially if they're alive, and also to secure access, to be able to have them at promotional events, to be able to have them participate in press interviews, to have access to archival footage, their family photographs, etc., and to have the actors interview them, talk to them, so that they can portray those characters on the screen. But I think another misconception, Rosemary, that people sometimes misunderstand is that a lot of these films are based on a true story. They're not the actual true story, right? Because oftentimes, true life isn't as interesting as the drama. Sometimes it's more interesting, but it's frequently dramatized, right? So based on a true story, not the actual true story. And if you rewatch the film again, at nowhere in the film are they saying that they've adopted this fellow, right? It doesn't say that they've taken him in. They've helped him. They've helped each other grow, and the film shows an arc of the characters. But I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there about what happens in Hollywood accounting and what happens with these films.
So if they didn't adopt them, how common is a conservatorship anyway?
Well, let me say it's not uncommon in certain situations. Someone might, in this case, he was 18, and this family, it should be noted too, they reportedly sold a bunch of franchises for $218 million, or a number in that range. It's been reported into the press. So they're independently wealthy, and perhaps we're speculating here. He looks at them and says, "Okay, you know how to manage money. Help me early in my career." He's just turned 18. He wants to play for Mississippi, and they help him. And what the family has said is that, "Hey, we've kept all the money in trust for him. We've sent him checks that he hasn't cashed. He's come to us a few times asking for all this money, which we didn't get." Now, Michael Lewis, the author of the book, and the Touhys both say that 20th Century Fox paid an advance of $250,000 for the option to make the movie, which was split 50-50 between Michael Lewis, the author, and the Touhys. And the Touhys say they split their share, evenly between the two of them, the couple, the children, and Oher, into fifths. So the question is, who's to be believed? Who knows? I guess that the truth will come out soon. But according to the Touhys lawyer, this is not the first time that Michael Oher has come after them for money. He's calling it the lawyer for the Touhys is calling it a shakedown, and saying that he's come at them in the past for $15 million, which would be completely disconnected from the reality of Hollywood budget and accounting for something like this, in my experience.
So what kind of damage control could the victims do if this is a shakedown?
Well, I mean, I don't see here the Touhys taking action against Oher. I see this probably being settled amongst the lawyers when the accounting is revealed. If what Michael Lewis, what the author, very reputable, best-selling author, what he's saying is true, and what the Touhys are saying is true, then Oher, they have the money in trust for her. They paid him, and this is a tempest in a teapot. But if it were a different situation, if it were adversarial, arguably in a different situation, it may be considered blackmail. If you say to someone, "Hey, pay me a bunch of money," which I might not even be owed, or I'll, plant negative stories in the press. It's not happening here, but if that were, then that's textbook blackmail.
Well, Domenic, so who do you believe has the burden of proof in this case?
Well, I think it's going to be a very black and white answer. I think there's going to be a studio contract that's going to say, what was paid to, what should be paid to whom. There's going to be, the writer is saying, Michael Lewis is saying that he gave part, as I understand it, part of his share or part of it went to the Touhys, and they're saying that they paid Mr. Oher or will pay him or set aside for any check that he didn't cash in a trust fund for him. All the 1/5 share or whatever they've apportioned he's entitled to as being one of the 5%. Remember, it wasn't just him depicted in the movie. It was Sandra Bullock played the mother, the Mr. Touhy, the father, and the two children. So there's 5 participants that the film is about, and they're saying they split any money they got evenly amongst the 5. That's the family story, and that's corroborated by the writer. at least with
Well,
regard to the amounts involved.
okay. Well, the writer and the Tuohys, they have a history, so we can't neglect that, right?
Yes, they have a history, but you would wonder why, a public figure, a well-known writer, would lie about the economics, especially because he can be contradicted if someone produces a contract from 20th Century Fox. But
Okay. Well,
it's not. There's no way to find out who's telling the truth here. There's an easy way to find out. It should come out in discovery, in court
okay.
papers.
Well, Dominic, could this whole situation have been avoided somehow?
Yes, yeah. Money sometimes drives families apart. Here we're looking at millionaire against millionaire. The Touhy's made a lot of money in the restaurant business, and presumably Michael Oher made a lot of money in the NFL. And unfortunately, a situation that was very harmonious. It seems that there was a deep amount of love and respect for both sides, has now come to an end over perceptions, perhaps right, perhaps wrong, over how much money was paid and should have been paid. The family has said, we're going to love Michael at 37, just like we loved him at 16, and we'll love him at 87. If they're lying, they could be lying, but it would be, theoretically, anything's possible, but it would be a very peculiar stance to take.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's my pleasure.